All right, so we are looking at Microsoft Access and finally going to get started into this. And so once again, I mentioned a couple weeks ago and last week as well, if you do not have a Windows computer, you will not, or access to a Windows computer, you will not be able to do Microsoft Access. Therefore, you need to let me know so that I can give you access to a virtual Windows computer. As I mentioned before, sooner the better. I got, well, I don't want to tell you how many responses I got, but let's just say I got very few. So I'm assuming that means everyone has access to something. Do not assume that somehow magically you will make this work off of a Chromebook or a Mac because you figured out a way. Unless you're going to literally make your Mac split your hard drive and have run Windows on it, you will not be able to do this. Okay, cool. That's one person. All right. So make a note of that. And then I will send you an email then, because we'll have to have something set up so that I can get you this as soon as possible so you can work on these assignments. Making a note of that right now. All right. So yeah, so just like your classmate did, if anyone does not have access, you need to let me know. When I say not access, I mean both access to a Windows computer and the application access. Because if you don't have an access to a Windows computer, you will not be able to do Microsoft Access. Again, it is required for your assignments for the rest of this remainder time. So, all right, cool. One person's not bad. I was just hoping it wouldn't end up being the entire class. So, all right. Well, so since you don't have one now, it might be hard for you to kind of follow along because you won't be able to visually see it, but that's okay. You can always, one, go back and look at the recording, but two, I think you'll be able to catch on very quickly to what we're doing as we work on it throughout this week. So the whole point of working with Access is to use this database software. And the whole point of using a database software is to create and use databases. Remember, databases is a collection of data and information that's stored for you to do some type of analysis with, whether that's just having it stored somewhere so you can access it whenever you would like to, or if you so that you could do some type of queries to be able to search for specific things, to do some type of analysis, or just so that you can very easily bring data in and have it go in a location and send out parts of it to other locations. But in the end, in the end, it's really just about being able to have that data and then be able to handle it. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. But before we begin that, we need to talk about how to actually have data, how data is stored on a database, and how do you access it? How do you input that data? How do you decide that? And so a lot of times, just like when we were doing the talk about the programming thing, a lot of times what people do is they just go straight to, oh, I'm just going to put this stuff in here. I'll worry about designing this later and deciding what my field should be and stuff like that. But that's backwards. Like I've mentioned before, the order in which you should do anything is first you understand the situation, the problem, the task that you want to perform. Once you understand it fully, then you can move forward. And by moving forward, you can plan. So that could be, in this case, designing the way things should flow, what your primary key should be, right? Remember, it has to uniquely identify each record. Like someone asks, oh, what if I want to move the field to a different table that I create afterwards? Well, if you decide what fields you want at the beginning before you actually create them, then that will help with that, right? Like we say, yeah, you can copy and paste, like we talked about earlier, or you could set those two fields equal to each other. Like the field in table 2 could be equal to the field that's in table 1 every time. So that you could do that too. But you plan those things out and then you actually execute it. Then you begin to actually build that database. And that is very, very important. It is a huge part of database, of creating a database. That's designing it. So just like when we coded, a huge part was planning it out before you actually just started doing something. Some of you, it was very few of you, which I was actually very proud of this time, that ran into issues where you would accidentally record yourself twice, or it wouldn't do what you expected to do because you're like, but I did record it. But you recorded extra. You recorded more things that you didn't do what you wanted to do because you didn't really plan it out. You just like, okay, I think that's what I'm going to do. And then you start doing stuff. And instead of stopping and going back and starting over, you try to scramble to make it work while it's all recording every single thing you're still doing. So, but usually that happens a lot. It was very few at this time, so I was very proud of that. To admit that you all did plan things out to some degree, which is good. Maybe the whole way. But again, same thing with working with the database. You want to plan out exactly how it's going to be set up. And so let's actually open up Microsoft Access. So you can take a look and see what it looks like. We get our own little special color here. So Access has this reddish burgundy ribbon color. You know, Word had the blue. PowerPoint has that orange one, reddish orange, blood orange. And then Excel had that green. Well, Access has this like burgundy reddish one. So they, of course, once again, we have those templates, so different templates that you could possibly use already built in. And then there's more that you could search for online that people have created. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a blank one. And upon creating that blank database, what actually happened was it automatically created a table which makes sense, right? If we think about what I told you, that in order to have a database, you need at least one table. Right? 'Cause you need to have at least one place that your data is stored, and tables are how we store our data. Well, it automatically created that. If I wanted to create another table, which we will do, I would go to this Create tab, and there's an option here in the Tables group for creating a table. Notice that there's some other groups here as well. There's a Query group, must be for creating queries, which we'll get to later. There's a Forms group, must be for creating forms. And another group here for Reports, must be for creating reports. Those are the 4 objects I told you that we would deal with, right? Somehow they're all right here next to each other. Well, because these are the objects that you create and use within Access, as I mentioned before. There's another section create another group here, and it's for working with those macros and coding. So macros and code. So working with VBA. We will not do anything specifically within here, but I will show you that at some point, just so you can see what it's like in Access, and it's the same in essence. All right, I'm gonna go back to my home tab here. So with our table created, you'll notice that the first thing here, this first column says ID. And what that is by default, it will automatically create a pre-populated primary key for you, and it will call it ID. The reason for that is because every record you create should have a primary ID, something that is going to uniquely identify it from anything else. And so when this is created, what you'll notice is there's be a contextual tab for table tools. You see there's 2 things here. I'm gonna click on the table one first. This is where I could add some properties and some other things, which we'll get to this on Wednesday, looking at relationships between tables. But let's look at the Fields tab. So the Fields tab gives us a little bit more here. We're able to see under the formatting group the actual data type for our field. So at this point, notice how when I selected ID, I did that for a reason, so we could see that the data type was auto number. That's because, once again, you have to have a primary key, something that's going to uniquely identify every record. And so Access automatically will say, oh, you don't have one set up? Well, I'll do this. I'll make it the auto number, meaning that it's going to start at 1, and then it's going to go to 2, and then 3. And so every time you add something, it's going to give it that new primary key. It's going to give it that next number automatically, so that it will always uniquely identify that record. So the first thing that comes to mind when working with a database is, what are you going to use it for? So what's its purpose? What kind of type of data are you storing here? And so to help make that decision, I'm going to go actually back. So let's just kind of walk through a couple things. Move forward though, so you can see what the assignment looks like, so you kind of begin to get an idea. The assignment will be creating 2 table objects in a database using Microsoft Access that each have a primary key that will be unique. Okay. This could be the default key Access automatically makes for your record. So the auto number that I just showed you. But if you, based off what you want to put in it, understand that, oh, I know what my primary key would be, then you can use that. It needs at least 5 fields. My primary key will count as one of those fields, so I need 4 more, essentially. I need to be able to have at least 10 records. So that means I need to have at least 10 data points that will have those 4 to 5 fields, additional fields, to take care of the additional fields to take care of. And then the rest of this part will come along on its own. But the second thing here, the 2 tables that we create must have at least 1 field in common. One of them being the primary key will be best. They say had to do it that way. I just said that will be best. And so there are some sites here that can give you some ideas of different databases that you might want to use as a project idea. I just said the easiest one would be for us to create the Pokédex because I'm still trying to catch them all. It's childhood. If you don't know what I'm talking about Pokemon. There are so many Pokemon. They have so many different categories and fields to describe them. They have descriptions. They have their name. They have names in multiple areas. They have different forms. They have evolutions. They have different stats. I think 5 or 6 different stats. There's just so much data on Pokemon. So it's so simple in my mind for people to understand and get this concept by just saying, oh, I'll just take, 10 of these Pokemon and I'll use those same 10 on the other table and just pick 4 different stats to put on one and 4 on another. Like it's very, very, very simple. But anyway, you can pick whatever you want. And so take some time to think about that. So in this example, though, I will use Pokemon because who doesn't love Pokemon? All right. So I'm gonna create a little Pokédex. Yes, question.
So will we get our database off of like Google? Like where would we find our information?
That's up to you. I've had students go into their closet and pull out all their album collections and do it based off the album. So they would take an album and from an artist and list out all the songs. This is just an example someone did once. They listed out all the songs and how long the songs took, who was the producer of the track, who wrote the lyrics, and then they were okay. I'm done. I'm gonna go on my other one. What other information can I put about this? Oh, what year was this actually done? Was there a music video made for it? Were there any artists featured on it? And so they just did that, and they picked their favorite albums. They ended up making a couple tables actually. I had someone else they pretty much kind of created a little library in their mind of all the books they had, and that's what they did. It all just depends on what you want to do. So like I've done in the last couple, like we've seen in the last couple of projects over the last, we're on week 10, so for like the last 7 to 8 weeks, you all have come up with your own ideas, right? I give you the general stuff and then you apply, but I have always at least given an example. So in this case, example follow would just be like Pokemon. So yeah, pick something that interests you, but you do want to be able to have 2 tables from it with 5 fields, so 5 categories describing, one of which will automatically be a primary key because it has to be. If it's the auto one, like that's used here, then nothing to worry about, right? If you're creating it, then you make sure that you create something that will uniquely identify it. So, does that answer your question, Chantal?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'm gonna create a Pokédex. Now, this does have auto number, right? It's already there. But I'm gonna change this up. So I'm gonna use something else. And so for Pokemon, there are 2 ways that you can uniquely identify a Pokemon. They have an index number that is specific to each Pokemon, but there's also the Pokemon's name. Um, will it work? Okay. Um, so there's a question about a specific example. So again, if you can have 10 records of the pieces that you did, then yes. And then there's are there if what's that say that? Remember you're gonna have to have 5 fields as well. Your auto if you use auto number, that's taken care of, so you need 4 additional fields, right? But then on the next table, you would want to have 4 different ones, possibly, or at max as well, because you can use the same primary key to connect those 2 pieces or that one piece together. So if you had like if you did the Mona Lisa, each art piece has its own like serial number, or you could use the auto number, and then you could tell, okay, here's the name of my portrait that I did. Here is you put the artist, you put your own name on there. Then you could put like the date. You could do a description where you're given the emotions or whatever it was that you used to create it. You could talk about, was it an oil paint? Was it water base? Um, there's a lot of different things that you could do. Like the thing about this is that there is so much data out there, just period. There just is. And you analyze data all the time, but you don't realize it. How much information are you taking into your brain every time you look at something? Right? So this is just about, okay, how am I going to collect this data? So again, it starts off with you identifying what it is that you want to do. Like, what is it that I want to look at? Okay, now that you got that, can you think of at least 10 different records or 10 different examples with at least 4 other um, categories for each of those? If you can, you're good. You're done. I've seen a lot of students do athletes because again they have a lot of stats and there's a lot there for them. Usually there is something because it's something that's important to them. I saw a guy do sandwiches because he just said he loved eating sandwiches. So he put like the meat. He put the meat that it had. Does it have a cheese? Here's the type of cheese. Does it do sauces? Does it do tomatoes? Like he did all this different stuff. And I remember someone that was sitting next to him said, "Man, you did yours easy. It's not gonna make sense though when we keep moving forward." And his made perfect sense the entire time through because you're going to be taking that data that you can do something with any data. There's no data is meaningless, but you don't want to go trying to make up stuff just so it fits in at the last minute. Find something that you're going to be comfortable with. So, okay, let's get to doing this. So, my primary key, I could use auto number, but since I'm going to do some Pokemon, I'm going to actually, I'm going to identify them as by their Pokemon names. So I'm going to do short text here. I could do long text, just allows me to type more. Um, so notice that with this selected, I changed the data type here. And what I'm going to do is, let's type in our first Pokemon here. So I'm going to go for good old Bulbasaur. Those of you that are watching, if you see I spelled something wrong, just let me know. And if I double click up here where the header is, the column header, which is really just my field name for my primary key, instead of ID, I'm going to put Pokemon name. Okay, I could just put name. I'm just going to put Pokemon name though. Okay, well, what are some other things that I may want to put in about Bulbasaur? Maybe I will put their index number. Maybe I'll put the region they come from. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Yeah. For this one, I'm going to put, does it evolve? Notice that this was different, right? So the first one was short text because I'm just writing out a name. The second thing is a number because I'm putting a number into it. The third thing was short text. Look at this one though. This was a yes, no. So it gave just a little checkbox. I'm going to see, does this Pokemon evolve? Um, date called. All right, so there's a date that it was called to you. So there's my Bulbasaur. So the 5 categories do not have to be specified to any particular requirement for the assignment. Yes, there are 5. Yeah, that's correct. There are 5 categories. They can be anything you want. Now, if you, I'm trying to think of different examples of the past. If you do like My Little Ponies, and y'all have names and stuff, you wouldn't then jump over to like Ninja Turtles just randomly inside of your database, right? Those don't relate to each other. It wouldn't make sense to have like a name of a Ninja Turtle as a field when you're talking about My Little Ponies throughout your whole table. So it should be something related to it, and you probably want something that you actually can fill out for everything too. So, but yeah, you are picking what you desire with this. So, and you'll notice the example I gave, use Pokemon. I'm not even using the same things, same categories now. Like I'm literally just pulling different stuff out. But yeah, so there's Bulbasaur, and I went in. This is how I start when I do databases. I start by saying, what are my columns going to be? Okay, once I got that, I can start putting in my records, like National Pokedex ID number. It's 001. I just plus 1. Region. I'm gonna put Kanto. Does it evolve? I spelled evolve wrong. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm gonna give it a check. Yes, it does. A date caught. I can just pick a date. Let's just say I picked up Pokemon yesterday. I did not. I haven't played in a long time. Yeah. So there's a question about another specific example. Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yeah, I've seen someone do Yu-Gi-Oh cards actually before. They had trouble at the beginning because to be honest, because they did not plan things out at all on what they were doing. And remember, you want a way to uniquely identify them. So they were starting off with their names. That doesn't work, right? Because there are some Yu-Gi-Oh cards that are named the same. So I helped them by trying to convince them to use because there's an actual ID number on each card. So you could be very specific based off that ID. Actually, there's 2 ways to clarify what card you have because there's 2 ID numbers on cards. So yeah, there's a couple of ways to do the Yu-Gi-Oh card. I had someone get really advanced and they actually inserted pictures into here, which I'll be honest with you, can be very tough to actually do, to insert a picture or the image as a part of the database. It can be done, but it can be tough. So yes, you can. In short, yes, you can use your cards. But again, it comes down to once you decide like, okay, I want to use this type of data. Okay, now you got to plan out like what are my fields going to be for this table, and in the next table, how's it going to fit? So I could keep going because I need 10 entries. I said right. So I'm gonna skip ahead though because pretty much now, if I wanted to, next thing I would do is I would just put in I guess try. I would just put in my next one, and just start typing. That's all I would have to do. Just start typing the next bit of information. Okay. But if I wanted to move away from this table, something that's very, very important when it comes to dealing with objects. Oh, you're welcome. Something that's very, very important when it comes to dealing with objects in Access, is to make sure you save it. Well, you might be thinking, duh, I always know that. I'll always save. I'll just go right here and click. Don't do that. Right click on the object itself and then click save. So I'm just going to call this one stat. I'm just going to call it, just call it Pokemon info. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, though, is since I just saved that, right click, save, I'm going to close this object because I'm not dealing with it anymore. If I double click on it, it'll open back up. And I can keep adding, go back and start adding again. I'll close that again. I'm going to create a brand new table. So I'm going to go to my Create tab, which I mentioned earlier. I'm I'm gonna go to table here, and let's create a new one. So this we're still doing with Pokemon. So I'm gonna use the primary key to be the same. So I'm gonna call it Pokemon because it was called Pokemon in the other, or Pokemon name, excuse me, because it was called Pokemon name in the other. And I'm gonna, oh, that's why. I want to begin typing the name, but it's gonna give me an issue. It's not letting me right now. I wonder why. Remember when you create a new table, it automatically says, oh, you need a primary key. I'll give you one. And so this first field that was given here that was called ID, that I just changed the Pokemon name, is still set to auto number. So every time you create one, you'll have to make the decision. Do you want to use the auto number or make a change? In this case, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to say, no, I can use short text. I know that I got Bulbasaur. And the next bit of
between
yes,
short text.
you say it again.
What's the difference with what's the difference between short text and like number auto or auto number?
So auto number will automatically put a number there. So it'll start off by giving the pretty much it'll start off at 1. The next time you create a new record, it will automatically put it in there for you 2. Next time you create a record, it'll automatically put it in there 3, and it'll keep doing that. Short text is you are saying that I am allowing myself to write text in here. So it's like validating the data type. You're validating what can go in here. So text can go in here. If I select the number like I'm going to do now, only numbers could go in here. Large number would be a much larger number. Currency, maybe like, for instance, if it was the selling price for this, I could pick currency, and then it would expect for what you put in to be numbers, and then it would give it dollars and cents with it. Date time, like I had on the other one, it automatically expects it to be a date. If I start trying to type something in, it would give me an error back. Actually, let me just show you that. So this one's set to a number right now. I'm gonna try typing in my name. It's like, hey, something's right here. The value you enter does not match the number data type in this column. And so this goes back to enter a new value. This goes back to planning, because why is that important? Like, oh, I can just type in what I want. Let me just make everything short text. Well, if I want to do some comparison with stuff, for instance, if I start listing out all these Pokemon and I was looking at their HP, so how many hit points they have, so pretty much how many times can they take a hit? And let's say I wanted to go through my entry and see which Pokemon had the largest hit points. If there's text written in there, then how am I going to be able to compare the text directly to that same number, right? How is it going to be able to know how to compare? It won't. Just like you, if I said, so I have this Pokemon with 110, and I had this Pokemon with a Christopher. You tell me which one is greater? You're gonna be like, what are you talking about? That doesn't match up. Or if I said, yeah, I caught this Pokemon on 43081, you're gonna probably say on April 30th, 1981. It's like, oh no, 43081. You're not sure what that is. It's just a number, but it's not a date time. You could assume that it is, but it could be completely wrong. So that's why when you're planning it out, it's very important to say what data type am I using for this field. That way it keeps it valid too. Because let's say you're entering things in, someone else comes along and starts entering things in. You've already set the standard that this must be of this certain type so that it can be utilized that way. Does that make sense? Yes. There's another question. Will you have to cite a source because you are using other people's information? If you are using someone else's information, yes. If it is open information, for instance, like the Pokemon stats and stuff that's open, I don't technically have to cite, but I'm going to give it credit though if I were to submit this somewhere. just like you would do for anything else. Now for these,
If we do give credit, do we put that in the comments section?
yes, that's what I was just about to say actually. So for these, you want to put it in comments or on your report which we won't create reports until the end, and it may be on your forms because you can't type. Well, you could create another field if you wanted to, honestly, with that site with that source cited. You could do that. There's like a hype. Like you could even so let me go here. There's a hyperlink option. Like if the source was coming from a site, you could do that too. You can put it right there. Um, just so you know, like the attachment one, if you were to have downloaded photos, because like I mentioned earlier how someone did pictures, this is how you could do that. But yeah, you could do your citing as a whole nother column, and then it would be the same for all of them. But it will possibly, it doesn't have to be, but that way you could have that, and that takes care of one of your fields. Kind of cuts your work a little short to you. But otherwise, I would personally only have the citing go into a description, which I'll show you that in a moment in design view. Or you could put it onto a form and directly on the report. So that way, when someone prints out the report or they come in, they see that citation is already there automatically in their face. So that was a really good question. No one's actually ever asked me that before. So thank you.
Yeah, that's why I was asking because I'm thinking of doing like albums, and I'm not sure if that would be considered open information because I believe anyone can retrieve information about it, but I don't know if I still have to cite it because it's someone else's information.
No, yeah, I understand. You're not. If you do albums, you're just listing like a public knowledge. Oh, that's the name of an album. If you were to start like taking lyrics and writing them in or something, then maybe there'd be some issues. But yeah, but I've seen people cite stuff for just that public data that is open. That's just like completely open, like stuff that like if the government does anything, it's open. Anyone can, and it's been released as public knowledge. Is anyone can use it at any point in time. And so like I do projects with actually, well, that's mostly what I do is work with data. And so I have tons and tons of different databases that I've looked at and used for assignments and stuff that are all cited. But they're all cited in their description. So which I'll show you where that is too in a moment. So all right, so HP, and I could put some other things. I think you guys are kind of does anyone have any questions about the creation of the table and the adding of the fields? Does anyone have a question about that?
So when you first put your name in, like say if you're about to like name the table, like how you have Pokemon name, how do you get it in there? Because I'm trying to put like a name in, but it's like giving me like error, won't let me.
Okay, so how do I get the title for the heading up here to say Pokemon name or to say whatever I want? So I double click in it. So for here, like right here, where it says click to add, this is because right now this only has two fields, Pokemon name, HP. So if I wanted to add another one, I would first have to select what data type it will be. And so I'm gonna do a number again, and then it automatically pops in and says field 1. And so I could then type what I want it to be. But let's just say I accidentally just started typing out here. Now it says, oh, field 1 is the name. Oh, I didn't want that to happen. Well, what I can then do is double click and it'll allow me to type and edit it again. Now, once you are in here, when you're actually starting to create records and actually put in data for each data point or each record, that's a different story. You should be able to just begin type again. But as I showed you, if you don't type it in if you don't type in using the appropriate data type, it will give you an error. And if you are, let's say you did not change this from being auto number, it's not going to let you put anything in because it automatically puts a number there. So be careful with that. How do you make a primary key the same between two tables? Great question. So this first table I created for Pokemon info. Let me save this other one actually real quick. It's gonna be called Pokemon stats. I just did that. So the question is, how do you make a primary key the same between two tables? I'm gonna open both of these up. What is the primary key for this table? Oh, it's the Pokemon name field. what is the primary key for this table? Oh, it's the Pokemon name field. They have the same primary key, and the data that would go into that field would be the same, right? Because they're both the Pokemon names. There's no difference in that. Now, I may put, if I really wanted to, I could put 10 different Pokemon between here, but that wouldn't be for this assignment. And just like being realistic, why would you want to have different Pokemon there? If we wanted to say, if we want to analyze, like I want to do all the starters for multiple regions. What would be best for me to do? Well, the best thing for me to do would be to have all of those starters listed in both of these tables. That way I can compare and actually do analysis between them in using both tables. Okay. So but just to answer your question, simplicity, you just literally make the primary keys the same. Give them the same name, put the same data there. That's how you can keep them the same. We'll build relationships between them on Wednesday, and depending on how you join the two together or say that they're related, it will say, like, sometimes it'll say, hey, if you want to make this, you need to make a new record in the other one as well, and it'll do that automatically. I believe that's your question, right? So we'll, like I said, we'll work on that on Wednesday. But the idea, if you want to maybe, I know that you might be a little ahead. So the idea behind it is how you create your relationship between your tables. So a couple ways to create relationships. You can go to database tools and click on relationships, and I'll leave to you to look ahead, since I will go over that on Wednesday. Or you can do it from so from database tools, you can create relationships and do it from there. So pretty much you just connect the two keys together, and now they're stuck together. And depending on how you join them, if you create a new record in one, it'll automatically create the other. Or if you create a new record in one, it'll say, hey, you need to make one in the other before you do this. Okay. Or it could say nothing. You could have nothing there because maybe you don't connect them correctly. So, but that might be something for you to play with for the next 2 days until we look at it on Wednesday. I think you'll catch on to it pretty easily. So, okay. Other question. All right, so let's look at some more stuff with these databases. So, of course, I could fill this out more. Normally, I would during this class, but I feel like you guys are really, really picking this up really quickly because of the questions that you're asking. So, if I'm wrong, let me know, so that way I can go in more in depth with some of these things. But it does look like you all are getting it. So, I'm going to show you some more things with just a table at the moment. So, some other things that are very important to know is there are different ways to view a table. And actually, if I go on the Home tab, you'll see there's a Views group because there are multiple views. I usually do it just from right-clicking up here. Most of the time when I do things with object and access, I just right-click on the object to do whatever I want if it's available there. That's just me. So this is where I save things. This is how I close them. Close all of the objects I have open. But anyway, for a table, there's two ways to view it. The first one that most people see is the datasheet view. So it's called a datasheet view because it looks like a datasheet, right? Very similar to what you saw in Excel. You have different cells here, but these are where you input your data, just like you did in Excel. So yeah, we even have like little drop downs here, so I could sort and filter off of that, just like you did in Excel when we created a table. So this is nice, and most of the time, well, if you're ever working with a table, this is how you would actually enter the data in it. It must be in datasheet view. Let's look at the other view. It's called design view. And remember, I said that design view is or I didn't say design view, I said designing or planning out what your database is going to look like is very, very important. It is. That's why it's its own view. This would honestly be the first thing that you do. Now you can do it. You can do most of this stuff at the same time as when you have it in Datasheet View. But let's take a look at a couple of things here. So notice it says field name here. So these are all the different field names I have at the moment. If I wanted to add some others, I could. So oops. So they gave it short text. Notice I got an issue here. The field name you enter does not follow the Microsoft Access object naming rules. And so, does anyone have a guess of why it doesn't follow those naming rules? I think many of you might be able to get it. Look at what I typed here. Yep, the period. The period is an issue. So, but I would not know that unless I actually tried it, right? So, all right, now I got that. And data type. So again, something that we've selected and looked at already before. But I can go here and make a different change here. You can even change this if you wanted to, even though we've already selected and created that way. I could change it to something else if I wanted to. No, I mean, I could add some other stuff. But what I did want to show you is this description here. Notice it says optional. You also didn't get an option to give a description to each field when we were on in Datasheet View, did you? No. And this is where you could get where I was talking about. I've seen citations in the description. This is what I was talking about. People would cite, okay, this is the source where I got this here, when I got this from, and it would just do that for each one, for each field. It's like, oh, this came from this website or this author, and they would just put that there. Which they most time it was just copy and pasted, or they would just type in the website. So yeah. So this is in essence the basics of using the design view. But notice that there's also a couple other options here. If you look here, you'll notice there's a key on Pokemon name. That's because this is the primary key. I could one thing I try to stress in this with this portion of the course is that the primary key does not have to be the first field in a database. Most people allow the first field to be the primary key because it just makes more sense that way, right? The first thing you see uniquely identifies this record. It doesn't have to though. It could be the last thing. It could be the second. It could be the fifth thing that's in that. A fifth field. It does not matter. All we need is a field that will uniquely identify each record. And so if I wanted to, and I was like, you know what? HP is going to actually uniquely identify each record. I could select it, go up here to the tools group under the table tools, contextual tab for design. Click on that. Boom. Now HP is the primary key. Oh, that's probably not a good idea. I think that this really is the only thing that uniquely identifies each record. So I'm going to make that the primary key again. There was no issues with me doing that. I can pick different fields to be the primary key if I really want to. But you want to pick the one that truly will uniquely identify each record. Okay. So we'll look at some other things here. So look at the data type for short text. So I mentioned earlier that short text has a short amount of text. Long text, you can put more in. Take a look at its field size here. It says it's 255. That's the maximum number of characters that I can actually type into this field at the moment. If I were to select long text, oh yeah, I'll do it anyway. There's nothing here.
Text just means you can type more into the box.
Yeah. So when I let's see, save it. Yeah. If I go back here, now I can type more than 255 characters if I wanted to, because I changed the long text. So how much can go in here? And you can get very specific with that too if you want. Go back to design view again. I'm gonna change this back. With this field size limit, if I really wanted to, I could say you're not allowed to type more than 100 characters. So I can define that as much as I want. Same thing with this guy with HP. So decimal places are auto. There should, like, my mind, there should be no decimals. So I can say 0 decimal places. I could add a caption so that people understand that, maybe hovering over it, what is this section supposed to be? I could limit it. So right now it's limited as a long integer. I could just say, no, it's just going to be an integer. I can define it as much as I want, get as specific as I want, but that restricts what people are able to put in, which can be good and can be bad. I can even test for certain things. Right here it says like validation rule. I could test that this HP is greater than 0 if I wanted to. Let's see if it lets you actually. So there's like different functions and stuff I can put in here. Or let me see if it auto puts it in here. Say greater than 0 like that. Again, I can get very specific with each of these. And honestly, I'm trying to hold myself from going too in depth, because on the surface, all we need to talk about is the creation of a table, what a query is, how to use one, and creation of some simple queries. We need to talk about a form, what it's used for, and a report, and what it's used for. And so showing you this extra stuff is just honestly because I think I think it's important. It's not something that you need for this assignment, for this class, but for some of you may be looking at it and says, oh wait, I feel like I can use a database. This looks like a cool one, a cool software to use. I want to play with it. So I'm trying to give a little stuff without going too much in detail. But the more questions you all ask, the more then I'll go in detail about. Because there is a lot that you can do in this. There are people whose full-time job is to work in Microsoft Access and deal with this, the creation of the table and designing it. Like, they literally are the database designer. That is their role. That is their job. All they do is design it, and then they hand it out to the next person to do data entry. There are jobs where people just do data entry. Yeah, I have a friend that at her job, all she does is Microsoft Access, and she creates. She is a designer. She designs the database, but she also sends them out and creates special forms for people to be able to enter things in nice and easily. She sends them out to various companies under her that use her company to create databases. So there's a lot that you can do in here, and I don't want to overwhelm you all. So hope that's not happening. But in essence, the simplest part is the creation of the fields, names, and the data types. Adding the descriptions are completely optional. The other changes that I made in here, just to show you what could be done, like changing the number of decimal places, giving a validation rule, default value, the size of the field, so how much you're allowed to put in. Those are just like icing on the cake. So here's some more ways that you can validate things further or limit what people put in. Okay. So, but that's design view. Again, whenever you're putting actual data in, you're going to want to be in Datasheet View. Yeah. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Okay. All of those errors were just because, hey, you had this database here before, but then you changed a bunch of stuff. Because I did just showing you guys different examples. And so it's pretty much saying that it's no longer the same database I originally created. And so that there may be things lost, and there may be issues. And that there was a thing that maybe some of you saw about data integrity, how I was not keeping the integrity, which was true. Because once again, when you are working with a database, you want to have a good understanding of what it is that you want and what it is that you need for you to do your analysis of data. The second thing is you design the database to plan it out. That's why all those messages came up, because it looks like I really didn't plan things out, right? I'm changing the data type of the primary key. I changed what the primary key was. I started adding all these rules on it. I started adding rules in other places. The database was no longer how it was originally created. So in most of those cases, in real life, that's not what I would do. Once that first one was created, what I would do is I would make a copy in which I change things. Like maybe the name of the field would be changed in a new one, or I would, in my new field, I would say is equal to, like when someone asked earlier about how do you move a field from one table to another. So I'm talking about, you make a copy of it and paste it on, or you could set the new field equal to the other. That's available as well. So wait a second. Okay. So are there any questions?
So pretty much we just need to have two different tables that are showing two types of like information.
Right. And I said that you want the two tables to be related. And one field needs to be in common between them. The primary key will be the best choice out of the fields to keep in common.
Okay.
And that is because we are going to relate them together and do some analysis on both together. So with that being said, I only had this happen once in the last 2 years, two and a half years. I'm trying to think of how long I've been given an assignment like this. Someone did the assignment and took their first table, copied, pasted, changed the name, turned it in. That's not two different tables, right? I've had someone else do, and this was fine. They did the same thing, but they erased two of their fields and created two other fields. That was enough. That's different, right? Everything is not the same on one table to the other. So I can do some kind of analysis between them. And in real life, that's how data may look. So yeah. Here, essence of this assignment: create two tables. Make sure they have a primary key that is actually unique, and I say a primary key that will be unique. I'm being serious. So when I look at your assignment, if you do something like, "Hey, I took the name of the students in class," that's not unique. Those names, they use the name as the primary key. That's not unique at all. There's no way to uniquely identify a person based off of just their name. Okay. I've had people, even though I always tell us too, first name plus last name does not equal a person's unique identification either. Even birthday still doesn't. I know there's this Facebook group when I was growing up. Christopher Stevens born on November 2nd. There was enough of us to have a Facebook group. So yeah, there's no justification for that. You really do need to have something that's going to be very unique. So the auto number feature will automatically give that to you. So if you're not sure, just use what automatically comes when you create a table. You need at least 5 fields. The primary key can count as one of them. It's already there. You only have to have 4 more. At least 10 records. So there should be at least 10 records on each one of those tables. So that's a total of 20 records. Each field type should have the appropriate data type. If I see you typing nothing but numbers and short text, I'm going to ask the question, why doesn't this just number or long number? Why is this text when all you're using are numbers? And it should be justifiable. You should be able to tell me, or you should be like, I'm sorry, let me change this and resubmit it. Okay. Once you do that, when you submit your database, in the comments, identify what your primary key is to me. So I want you to say, my primary key is whatever. So like my case, my primary key is Pokemon name, and explain why I chose that field as your primary key. Even if you're using the default, you should be able to explain why. I chose Pokemon name because it uniquely identifies each creature, because each creature has a specific name. I used the auto number feature because I could not think of a way to uniquely identify each Pokemon, because I decided that there could be Pokemon with the exact same name, because I'm going to catch more than one, like one of those people that catches more than one of the same type. The two tables must have at least one field in common. The primary key would be best. What if I don't use the primary key to have in common? Maybe I have primary key for one and it's a different field in the other. That's fine. I do a field in one and a field in another. That's fine too. But you all might, because we'll talk about this when we build relationships on Wednesday, but just think carefully about that too. Why would it be best for it to be the primary key, to be what is in common between the two tables? Think about how I say that a primary key uniquely identifies each record. So why would it be a good idea for the common field to be the primary key? Okay. So that is what you have. So if you look at the rubric, the first two are in regards to your student learning outcome and your course competencies. So demonstrate common uses of operating systems management and Office Suite applications, where we're using the Microsoft Access database software. So that's a Office Suite application. The next one, pretty much the same thing. Use word processing, spreadsheet, database, and presentation software. We're using a database software. Two tables created. Do I see two tables in your database? Each table has at least 5 fields. Do I see at least 5 different columns in your two tables? Are they the exact same as the other side? Yeah, the exact same data. Those are things I'm gonna look for, because it should be different, right? Maybe some of your fields will be the same across, but having all 5, that's a little suspect, or sus, as I've been told that people say now. Fields with clear data types. So again, why do you have all numbers but you say that the data type is short text? That's kind of weird. And you might be able to justify it. I'm not going to say you won't. You might be able to actually justify that. It's possible. But I'm going to ask the question if I see it. So it makes more sense just to have stuff that is of the appropriate data type from the beginning. At least one field in common between tables. We talked about that, how the primary key would be best. Each table has at least 10 records. And then you pretty much, I'll give you half a point for each one that you have.
I mean, like, say if we're doing Pokemons, we have to have 10 Pokemons listed.
Yeah. Okay. So I think in the example, yeah, I do exactly that. Is it in the one before? Oh. Because yeah, this should have pictures. Oh, there you are. They just were loading. Let's see. Okay. Do this real quick. I know you guys can't hear the sound. It's okay. So yeah, like this. Yeah, I would just have 10 things. 10 different records listed. I have a lot of fields in this one. Okay, yeah. I be honest with you, I know what Rainbow Six Siege is. I do not know what the operators are in it. I have never played the game. I'm sorry. But if the operator can uniquely identify it, like I'm assuming there's like a squadron and maybe the operators are like their code names or something. If it is, and that could work, you will have to justify that when you use the primary key though, and give your explanation why. Which you would get me because I don't know what that is, but
Anytime we're putting in a number, should we make it large text, like number or like large number? I'm just confused on like how like the short text and all that, because you're saying like you need to be able to justify it. So if we're putting in a number, any number should either be under number or large number.
Yeah. So let me show you from design view. So yeah, like the short text had a limit on how many characters it could be put in, right? If you saw you may have noticed long text did not. So let's look at number and let's look at large number. Same deal. Field size is long integer here, which I can change that. But large number doesn't have that because it's going to go beyond a long integer. And that's just like, again, how much can we put in? I honestly doubt any of you would have need to use large number at all. Long text, I doubt it. Is it possible? Yeah. Are you going to go over 255 characters for a data cell? That's what that comes down to. Just how it is in the video. Do you want us to do it like that? You can. That I did that as an example. Again, there's no audio on it, so you could just follow along that example of here's me doing one, or two. So I think I do go back in and do. But the example I do in there, if I recall, I had like 7 fields in one and then 3 in the other. So you would of course have to be different in that case, because the requirements for the assignment are different than that. But yeah, you could totally do that. You could just follow along of how it was done in the video. Sometimes I want to make sure that it's completely clear. Like for these, just again being honest, would there really be a reason for you to use a large number? I'll tell you, like a long integer it's long. There is a lot of digits that you can put into that. So I don't see a reason why you would ever want to go over that. You have a use for a large number. But I'll be honest with you, if you put large number and I saw a number in there, even though if I saw all your numbers were like 3 digits, I wouldn't count it against you. I would tell you in the comments, hey, there's no need for you to use that, because that is not that number you typed in is not that big. I'll tell you this: if you have 10 characters in it, it's still not that big. You probably put 32 in there. It's not big enough for a large number. Long text and short text is the text you're typing going to be more than 255 characters. If you're writing like a short story or synopsis of someone, then yeah, maybe you want to use long text. If you're just typing in like a name or a short sentence, there's no reason for you to go above short text. So, and then the others, I feel like the others are pretty straightforward too. Like currency having to do with money, date time having to do with dates and times. Yes and no, giving you a checkbox to allow you to check yes or check no. Hyperlink, you adding a hyperlink in, an attachment. Calculated, we haven't talked about, but that's how what I mentioned earlier about saying 2 tables equal. That's what you could do. And all you're doing there is just calculating what should be the result in that cell. Kind of like doing a formula, like we did in Excel, enter into Excel.
Recording be up like at a decentable time?
I'll just be 100% honest with you. Like every time, I don't know when the recording is done. So like when I click stop, WebEx in the cloud begins to render it, and when it gets done, that's when it's done. So there are sometimes I've done it and I look at the time and it doesn't get done until 1 p.m. the next day. Other times it'll be 6 o'clock tonight and it's done. So I honestly put it up as soon as I see it. So yeah, I apologize if you feel that it's too late. If it's past a day, then that is a different issue. I don't think I've been past a day with them. But yeah, so I put them as soon as I see it. So I'll continue to do that, and that's the best I can do. Or when you say reasonable, are you referring to how sometimes I'll do it like at 3 a.m. in the morning?
So that way we can still just look back at it and try to get the assignment done today. So I just thought maybe like after class it might be posted, but not like I understand that it takes a while for it to finished doing its thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. As soon as I see it, I'll put it up. Yep. Just how is it? Okay. So, other questions? Maybe ideas that you have, you're not sure if it's going to work.
I have a couple of questions. Can I use like more than 5 categories, or does it just have to be 5?
It just has to. You have to have at least 5 fills. So, yeah, use as much as you want.
Okay. I came in like a little late because of internet issues. So how do I like start up the table?
So once you open up access, you'll have an option for in the templates. I would choose blank. So you choose the blank database. Once you get that, the next thing that you'll need to do is Datasheet View. Yeah, save. The next thing that you'll need to do is start adding your fields in. So, well, before you and if you need to have it planned out what you want to have, but once you have that, then you come in and you can add your fields. When you go back and look at the video at the beginning, you'll be able to see that as well. But pretty much I can double click and change the name of those fields. But the other important part is when doing so, for instance, it's already been done, but in the formatting group here, under the field tab, you'll see data type. I can make a change to that data type here. I could also do that in the design view as I showed you as well. If you want to know how to create a new table, because you'll have to create 2 of them, you'll go to the create tab and you can just click on table. Notice that there's table and then table design. That's because you could do it from the design point of view to start off with if you want to as well. Can you use a team roster? Yes, I have seen that done, and I've seen people do it with South Mountain athletes as well. Speaking of doing characters from Kingdom Hearts and having a different table for each game to know who is in each game. Someone has done that before, so yes, that would be great. There may be even I don't want to tell you what they did. I'm sure you have your own idea, and I don't want to influence it too much. But yeah, it's totally available to do that. There's a lot of characters in that game. That's a lot of records that you can have, and a lot of characters have different abilities, home worlds, other worlds they've been on and visited, power ups they've given Sora. There's a lot. Which games that they, yeah, like you said, which games they appeared in? Does the field have to be different for the second table? They all should not be the exact same. Was my answer to that. So if I see you create your first table, you copied and pasted it as the second table and changed the name, that's not cool. If you have, I think I gave the example where it was someone had 2 tables, 3 of the fields were the same. That's just how it turned out to be. It just was what it was, but they were uniquely different, and that is something that does happen in the real world. I'll give you an instance. This morning, a database I was working with was on airports, and I was looking at all the different airports, trying to see how many flights are going in and out of different. Time's up. How many different flights are going in and out of each airport, and where are they going to? And so I have 2 different databases. The first one is airports, and all it does is give me codes. And the codes are like there's actual integer number for each airport that kind of uniquely identifies the airport, but also each airport has its own unique name, right? So I got 2 ways to identify. Well, in one table, the primary key is that airport code, but there's a description, which is that airport name. There's actually they have another code too that uniquely identifies them, like PHX is the Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. LAX is the Los Angeles one. However, there is another the main Los Angeles, California airport is Los Angeles, California Whitman. So the Whitman, I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, we're going to the Whit." Like, no, you go LAX. That's how you fly. So I had those three things in this one, but in another database that I was working with to make the connection, because the other one had more information about where you're flying from or where you're coming from, going to. Its primary ID was actually the 3-digit code that most, or 3 to 4-digit code most people are used to. So in the first one, I had to look up, hey, where are those airport codes? Then I had to go look in the field for that 3-letter one, like ATL, LAX, PHX, and the WIT, WHIT, and then connect. That's how I connected it to the other one. So, which we'll talk more about on Wednesday. But yeah, so those fields they do have a lot in those two databases. They had a lot of fields that are in common, but for what I needed in the end, I had to use both fields. So I had to take pieces from both. If I do albums, should I make a citation if it's a public information? Yes, no, how again? Once again, you probably don't have to actually, as long as you're not like, if you start typing out lyrics, you might want to say this came from blah blah blah. If you're worried about it that much, what I would do is just put it in the description. So when you go to design view, in the optional part for the description, just type it in there. It'll be fine. Yeah. But if I like start saying like Michael Jackson's Thriller, that's public knowledge. That's not. I'm not using it as my own in any kind of way. I'm just talking about that data.
Save this, like, should we save it as a PDF or an XPS document?
I'm so glad you said so. It automatically saves as a data, but there is something very important. Remember, I said to save each portion on its own. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, I saved that like when we have to upload it.
No, I know. I'm getting to that. So I'm gonna close all these pieces. So now this database has not been saved yet. Each object has been saved in it, but this has not been saved yet. Now, but you'll notice that there is no save option there. This is why I said it's important to save each object separately. So now I'm going to save the database as, and it'll always be the same type, or for you all, .accdb. That stands for Access Database. And so when I save as, I'm just going to put it in the downloads real quick. I'm just calling it whatever, but that .accdb is what's important. So make sure what you upload is that, and I'm going to show you what I mean real quick, because while it's open, here's a common error that most people make. You got two things here. Both of them look the same. Notice one has a lock on it, and the extension is LACCDB. That stands for the lock, because I currently have it open. And so to be protective of the data that's there, there is a lock that's there. You should be submitting this, the ACCDB. So the access database is what should be submitted, not the lock, but this. Okay. So I'm glad you said that, because that comes up every time. I don't know why I always forget. I know it's in the lesson, but I want to make sure I tell you all that, because that's very important. Thank you for asking that. That was really, really important. Okay. So class is over, but I'm still here. If you have other questions, keep asking them. I'm still recording, so that way people have it too. I know you all have other classes though, so. Okay, yeah. Thank you. You have a nice day as well. Thank you. Loved your project. Other questions?
I do, Professor. So for the 10 records, do you want us to be different from the second table too?
So so remember, one of your fields has to be in common between them. And so in truth, if you look at it from on the outside, they really aren't different, but they could talk about different things. Like for my Pokemon one of them just gives their general info stuff. The other one gives stats for specific for each Pokemon. So there is a connection between them because of that one common field, the Pokemon name. So the Pokemon we're talking about, but they aren't. That's not the same. It's not the same information, right? One tells me like, oh, here's the regions from, can it evolve, da da da. The other one just tells me straight stats. So the tables in reality, if you look at them just individually, you'll be like, oh, those are two different things. But in reality, they are, in the grand scheme of things, they're talking about the same thing. So I hope that helps answer your question, because it's kind of like one of those yes and no things, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Other questions? Oh, you have a nice day too. No, you're fine. I understand. I appreciate you, your honesty about it, and take your apology as well. So, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna stop recording it, and then let's get you a virtual computer.